right. Well, hey everyone. We want to welcome you to our Q&A session with Amber Melanie Smith and Joanne Toller. This session is aimed at answering your questions about fundraising, nonprofits, and how to streamline your efforts. All right, so this session is proudly sponsored by Click and Pledge. Click and Pledge is a game changer for nonprofits of all sizes looking to take their fundraising to the next level. With Click and Pledge, you get access to powerful tools like customizable donation forms, peer-to-peer fundraising, text to give, in-person fundraising, and even fundraising solutions right inside of Zoom. So basically, this just makes it easier than ever to engage with your patrons no matter where they are. All right, but first, let me go ahead and introduce who's here today. My name is Rachel Briner, and I'm part of the marketing team here at Click and Pledge. We are so happy to be joined by Amber Melanie Smith and Joanne Toller, who will introduce themselves a little bit more later. I'm also pleased to have moderators Susan Higgs and Bethany Teague here. And then Kate Herson is also on the call, and she will pop in a little bit later to talk about one of our features. But we do have a really great team here today, and we cannot wait to get this Q&A session started. All right, so the way that this is going to work is that Susan and Bethany will ask questions submitted through the registration form, and then we'll take a little intermission, and then we'll do some more questions after it, and then we'll wrap up. And just so y'all know, as a little token of our gratitude, we are so happy that you are here. So we'll be giving each of you a $10 Amazon gift card if you're able to stay till the end. So you can either use this for yourself or you can use it for your nonprofit. It really is up to you, but we did want to give you that little gift just for being here. All right. So with that, I'm actually going to pass it off to Susan, and she's going to take it away with the Q&A section.
All right, very good. Thanks everyone again for being here. And let's start off with and here we have Amber and Joanne. Do you all want to introduce yourselves really quickly? I think everybody probably knows you all here, but
Sure. For those who don't know me, I just dropped my YouTube channel in the chat, but I'm a nonprofit founder, former executive director, student of social impact, and my passion is really helping people figure out their path to make an impact and grow and lead successful organizations to that end. I'm really excited to be here today and answer some of these questions.
And hi, I'm Joanne Toller. I am a fundraising coach. I have been in this sector for 30 years. I followed my favorite auntie into nonprofit work and still absolutely love it.
And I love that. I love that you followed your auntie into it. All right, so let's go ahead and start off with some of the questions. And I will say we got a great number of questions. Thank you all so much for your contributions. And actually some of the questions were kind of in the same line. So, there are a couple situations where we decided maybe we would combine some of the questions. So let's start off with these. Okay, so the first question here from Hayden. I am working for a small new nonprofit. How do we maximize our efficiency and small team while building a donor base? And then we also have a question from Doug. What are your best fundraising suggestions for small nonprofits with 3 or less staff? So Amber, do you want to go ahead and begin with this?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a really good question. I've definitely been there personally. There's a lot of talk about diversifying funding, and in general, that can be a good practice. But when you're starting with a really small team, you're not necessarily going to have a robust development department that can specialize in all these things like grant writing and major gifts and stuff like that. So my top advice for groups that are starting out or who have a really small team is to really hone in on who your donor target audience is. You want to be thinking about who cares about your mission, who has a personal stake, a business stake, or a mission stake in having your problem that your nonprofit is tackling be solved in the community. So to give an example, let's say you have an animal rescue organization. Pet stores might have a business stake in the success of your work, right? People who love animals, people who have dogs, 2/3 of Americans who have at least one pet have a personal stake in your mission. So thinking about who your donor target audience is by asking who cares, who has a stake in our success, and then really doing a lot of outreach to build your audience full of those people in your donor target audience. That is important because those are the people and groups most likely to be able to and want to fund your mission at this stage anyway. So if you can build some momentum with those early donors, you're going to be putting yourself in a better position to specialize later on. Joanne, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think you nailed that one. That yeah, keep it within, keep it reasonable, and keep it doable.
Very interesting. And I think the thing that hit me with that is business interest. That wasn't necessarily something that came to my mind during the question, but tapping into that resource makes so much sense. So very interesting. And I will say that we do have a Q&A area available too. So if you have more questions or follow-up questions, you can put that in there now. And again, we do have kind of a tight time frame for this, so we'll do our best to get your questions answered. So let's move on to the next question, and that is from Abraham. I am curious about the role of technology in modern fundraising. Can you share any examples of innovative tech solutions that have transformed the ways nonprofits raise funds? And Joanne, do you want to go ahead and start with this?
Yes. So again, 30 years in the sector, I have seen technology just change everything from, we had talked a little bit before the webinar started about back in the olden days when I was doing events and we had a silent auction, and at the end of the night you have people standing in line waiting to pay by cash or pay by check, or you manually wrote down the credit card numbers. And now with the swiper one, you can have almost like a POS right there. You can collect your donations. It inputs right into your software right there. There's also, just the text to give, when you're doing events, the Givent feature. These are all things that technology that we can incorporate into our fundraising now, from, the Zoom fundraising. I hope we're going to talk about that a little bit later on, because that's massive. But just all of these ways that we can get creative with our online fundraising, and that we're not using 100 different platforms to do it, that there are platforms like Click and Pledge where we can do it all within one platform. And Amber, anything to add to that? Oh, you're muted.
Too many buttons. I'm sure there's like a bunch of other questions about AI, so I'm not even going to touch that stuff. But yeah, no, I think that's great.
Okay. And we will be a little bit later on when Rachel, when we have our little intermission, we will be talking about some of those features that you were just mentioning there. So glad to do that. All right, so let's move on to the next question. Let's see. Next question is from Bren. How do you gain new donors in your local community to a cause that impacts outside of their community? So Amber, you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, and Bryn, I think you're the same Bryn that's here today. Hello, good to see you. I was consulting another group that had a similar question a couple weeks ago. And the trick here is there's always going to be a pocket of community members inside your community who will care about an issue or a cause, even if that issue or cause is happening outside of your community, right? And the trick is, how do we find these people? I would ask, do you have faith groups or other organizations tackling similar issues, or civic clubs that are addressing a similar issue? And you didn't say what the specific issue you're tackling was in this question, but in the case of the person I was talking to before, it was finding people locally who would care about something happening in a totally other country, right? So I suggested that they try to figure out where's the community of the people from that country in this area, because they always exist, right? So finding those people, and like I said before in answer to the other question, who else has a personal, a business, or a mission stake in your mission? Let's say you're tackling hunger. There are grocery stores and organizations that care about that, even if it's not specific to your local community. So figuring out who those populations are, who those I guess in a business, you'd call them like affinity groups, who those pockets of neighbors are, and talking to them, getting their insights, getting them to become invested in your mission by having conversations with them, and then cultivating them as future donors. Joanne, any other thoughts?
Yeah, no, I'm working for an organization right now that's a small rural community, and we're hoping to tap into donors from one of the larger communities. So we're looking at ways that how it impacts the larger communities, and what some of those companies in the larger community have, like, so obviously agriculture, things like that, organizations that are within those small rural communities.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's go on to the next question. Okay, and again, we have kind of similar questions, so we kind of are, putting them together. But the first question is from Sam. Is there a database or process to tap into for large donors? And then a similar type of question from Alyssa. How can we find new major donors when we have a small contact list? So, Joanne, do you want to start with this question?
Sure. Well, there are databases out there for grants. There's another database that has donors over 1 million, and then there's Big Online. I've used that. I didn't find it that useful. What I found works best is looking from within. So in our own database. And that's where, we started off, Amber was talking about how small nonprofits can raise money. And in fundraising, there's that base that are annual donors, and that's how we bring new donors in, as annual campaigns, and then how we renew them, keep them engaged, steward them well, report back to them, so that they build a relationship with us to a point where we can ask them for a larger donation. So this organization that I'm working with right now, I just finished earlier this morning going through their database, looking for potential donors who could make a larger gift. So really the best way is from within. If you do manage to find larger donors, then just building that relationship with them to the point where you can ask them for a significant gift. Amber, anything to add on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. And, I've been in this position too. And I will say, figuring out other ways to grow your audience, but engage them in ways that are not immediately asking for money. For example, in my organization, we created an advisory board. This was a non-voting group of people, and it brought in people who genuinely cared about our mission, but who were not being asked to take on the commitment of the board. And from that, actually, we unearthed a handful of people who became major donors because they saw behind the scenes of our work. We honored their feedback and asked for their input, and that cultivated a relationship before we even knew they were major donors. So having those engagement tools to bring people in and give them insights into your organization can be a way of discovering who those people are within your circles.
That's a great idea. It all starts with a conversation, doesn't it? Okay. All right. I think we can move on to the next question. And this is from Diane. How do you find skilled community volunteers to support your organization in the startup early growth stage? And you can see, things that were mentioned were like IT support, accounting, fundraising events, marketing, all the things that nonprofits need. So Amber, you want to start?
Yeah. So before I was an executive director, I was a volunteer manager. So I love this question. There's a couple things we've got to do here. First, we have to lay the groundwork to be able to attract the right skilled volunteers and to be able to manage them well. So the first thing you need to do is think about what is your scope of work and write a really solid volunteer opportunity description that lays out exactly in specific terms what you want them to do. For example, if it's a marketing strategy. Let's say you want someone to come up with a marketing strategy document for the year that includes how you're going to engage on social media. Like, get as specific as you can, because these skilled volunteers are going to be more likely to respond to opportunities where they know exactly what they're committing to and how much time. So getting clear on that in advance is going to be your first step. The second step as to how you actually find these people, LinkedIn has a great tool where you can search for people who are open to volunteer opportunities. I can't share my screen, so I can't show you how to do that, but you can go search for, let's say, marketing professionals, and then there's a filter you can check that says, show me only people who said they're open to volunteering. So that's one way. Obviously, don't just cold call them and ask them to be a volunteer right away. You've got to build a relationship. There are organizations called volunteer centers in many cities across the United States who often can post your volunteer opportunities and advertise those to people who might be looking for those kinds of things. There's groups like Taproot Foundation who specialize in skilled volunteers. So there's lots of resources and organizations whose job it is to go help you find those skilled volunteers. But like I said, you're not going to be able to find the right fit and manage them in a way that isn't frustrating for you if you don't have that concrete volunteer description kind of scoped out first. Joanne, anything to add?
No, I was just thinking this kind of falls under donations, but one of the things that I really like to do is mapping. I will take some of our key supporters, take them out for coffee, sit down with them and say, who do you know in your network? I'm not asking them to ask for donations. I've got a list of things like IT, accounting, these list of industries to say, who do you know in these industries? And that's typically how I find connections or contacts to make donation requests, but it would also work very well for finding skilled volunteers, is getting referrals from people who are already in your circle.
And I'd like to kind of have a follow-up question on this from a lot of the feedback that we sometimes get from our nonprofits here, is that, you know, sometimes they'll get like great volunteers in a role, but the hard part is retention. You know, so especially when I see like IT support, accounting, things like this, those are key roles within an organization. So when a volunteer or, you know, staff member, it could be, leaves, you know, it can leave a kind of a big gaping hole. So when it comes to like retention of volunteers or things like that, do you have any thoughts on ways that nonprofits could eliminate the potential hazards of depending on, you know, one person too much?
Yeah.
I know Amber's going to say the same thing I'm going to say. So
well,
go, Amber.
Let's
go.
see. I mean, first of all, like, volunteer retention could be a 2-hour long webinar on its own. But I will say, making sure you have that job description or volunteer job description is important. And it's because people will sign up for things that fit them, and fit leads to retention. So that's part one. But part two is, I highly recommend, if you're just starting out, don't start with ongoing long-term opportunities that are skills-based. Start with project-based opportunities. So come do this one marketing plan, come advise or consult on this one IT problem, because that's how you build a relationship. And when they have a good experience, then they're like, what else can I do? So that would be my advice. But Joanne, I don't know if that matched what you were going to say or not.
It does, because it's around that stewardship piece, right? They have a great experience. And that's what our ultimate goal is to make sure they have an amazing experience, that they feel like they are valued and that their work is valuable by properly stewarding them.
Okay, and I see there's a question in the Q&A area, and this pertains to this this particular question. So let me go ahead and ask it. We have a question from Barbara. And she asks, what about liability for the volunteer base? Does my organization need liability insurance that covers risk for engaging with volunteers?
Yes, please have that. General liability for your board members. You need directors and officers insurance. There's all sorts of insurance. And I don't know exactly what your organization does or what the various types of risk that could be involved. But you might also consider volunteer accident insurance, which is apparently a whole different thing. But yes, I highly recommend that. And you're looking at anywhere from a couple hundred to a couple thousand a year for those.
And a lot of the clients that I work have me list them as co-insured under my own insurance as a consultant.
Gotcha. Okay, very good advice. Always protect yourself. Okay, let's go ahead to the next question. This is from Lubna. I'm here to learn more about the best ways to fundraise online and at live events. How do we keep corporate donors interested when we are not hosting live events? I would also like to learn more about Click and Pledge. So lots of questions kind of rolled into this one question. Who would like to start?
Amber, did you want to go ahead?
Sure. Okay, so in my experience, I'm going to tackle the corporate donors part here. In addition to potentially being sponsors or donors for your live events, corporate donors are often looking for volunteer opportunities for their employees. So that is an excellent and highly effective way of keeping companies involved between other things that they might be supporting. I've had companies offer their marketing department, this goes back to the skills-based volunteer thing, to consult on our social media strategy. We've had volunteers help us, paint a school. So anything that our organization was doing, if there was an opportunity and a need for volunteers, we would invite our corporate partners to participate, and that really helped with engagement.
Then I'll speak to the online fundraising part. Online fundraising really begins with having a good, strong community. So I like to dive into my analytics and my data and create almost like an avatar of who our typical donor is online. And then when I create social media posts, email campaigns, create my landing pages, I channel them. I speak directly to them. I write and create the materials as if I was speaking directly to them so that it just connects more naturally with them. And then making sure to engage on, so many nonprofits, they'll post and then they'll ghost, and they're not engaging with their community. They're not building up those relationships so that when you put out a call to action, that you're running this online campaign, they're not jumping on board because they haven't built that relationship with you. So that would be my biggest advice, is just engage with your audience, create that community. And then when you run an online fundraiser, they're there with you.
Okay, very good. And the last piece of this question is, I would also like to learn more about Click and Pledge. So this might be a good time, Rachel, to go ahead and have our intermission, and you can tell us a little bit more about Click and Pledge.
Yeah, for sure. Just trying to find my unmute button. Let me go ahead, scroll down a little bit. All right, awesome. So this is our little intermission section, and I'm just going to chat a little bit about Click and Pledge. We are, again, really, really happy to be joined by Amber and Joanne. So thank you both again for being here. But with Click and Pledge, we really do try to focus on nonprofits. We focus on you. We're not here to make a buck, or we're not here to scam you or lock you into crazy contracts. We just really want to make sure that you are successful. So we do have some core pillars at Click and Pledge, right? So one of the things is that we are super scalable. So our solutions will adapt and change based off of your growth, the size of your organization. So let's say you start out with Click and Pledge and you're a smaller org, and then in 3 years you become a massive org. that's okay. We still work with you, right? Another thing is that we offer really incredible customization to either reports, to donation forms, or peer-to-peer. And that's something that I think is pretty valuable, especially if you want it to be aligned with your branding. And then we also make sure that we're really transparent with our pricing, right? So if you go to our website, you will see the pricing right there. We don't hide it behind a bunch of meetings that you have to join or corporate pricing or anything like that. We don't bind you into any contracts, like I said before. So we just really, we like things to be transparent. So that's another thing with Click and Pledge that I think is really great. We offer free support. So we have that as a great thing. All of our features are included. So there's not going to be a bunch of different tier levels. You know, if you're paying one price, you only get access to these amount of features. And if you're paying another price, you get access to, you know, different features. It's all included in one thing. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about with Click and Pledge's pillars is that we are PCI level 1 secure. So that basically means that your donor's data is protected. All right. So I talked about having access to a lot of different features, and you can see in this chart sort of like the buckets in which things fall into. So we have the Connect platform. We have the Click and Pay suite, which is our integration with Salesforce. And then we also have the Swiper One mobile app. So inside of our platform, these are some of the things that you'll find. And again, this is just the tip of the iceberg of the features that you'll find in our platform. This isn't everything. But you know, some of the things I want to note is those donation forms. We have Zoom fundraising. We have AI optimized donation amounts. So that's IntelliBooster, where Click and Pledge sees the data that, okay, this past donor donated $1,000, right? You don't want your donation form to offer them $20. You know, it's using AI in order to maximize the donation amounts that that patron will see. We have reoccurring updater. We have, you know, donation buttons that you can put on your website. And then we do offer various third-party integrations. But I know that a lot of people do start off with donation forms. So I am going to start here. So one of the things is that with our donation forms, you can customize the colors, you can customize the images, put in your logos, you can move things around the way that you want it to be. And we do offer with our donation forms popular wallets like Apple Pay, Google Pay, Amazon Pay, all that kind of stuff. And then you can embed these forms directly on your website, or you can also have it like as an overlay to your website. So it's almost like a layer to your website. And then we also offer like a standalone page. So let's say that you just want to send a link out and it's just your donation form. We have that too. And then we do have integrations with WordPress and Drupal. Okay. So I'm also going to talk really quickly about Givent. So this goes back to Zoom fundraising. And this is a really great way if you want to use online events in order to fundraise. And I'm going to pass it off to Kate really fast, and she's going to open up the Givent application within Zoom just so you guys can see what that looks like.
Hey, everybody. So I am just now turning on a Givent. So this is something that any host of any Zoom meeting can do. So your organization will set up the Givent and send a token to the host. The host simply enters the token, which I just did, and hits publish and broadcast. And you should all be seeing, those of you who are joining by computer, by laptop, should all be seeing a button to join the Givent. And if you click that, you will see a pop-up on the right-hand side of a donation form. So this is right inside your Zoom meeting. And it works for both webinars, obviously, since we're on a webinar, and for regular meetings. For webinars, your mobile phone users are not able to see the donation form, but in a regular meeting they can. So everyone is invited to participate here. All you need to do is, this is a test account, so you can make a donation, say, pick an amount, and the credit card is going to be a 4 and 15 number ones, and it's on the screen here.
So you can test that out and play around with it.
Yes, I can't type and talk at the same time, so I'm entering one here. And you can also add the additional fee to this to cover your processing, and your donors can all make a comment. So I'm going to say that this is a great feature, and I am going to submit my donation. And it's processing. Okay, now that my donation has processed, I have the ability to view the stream, and I can see several people have already donated. And because I'm on camera, I get the option to show the virtual stream when I'm speaking. And now you should all see kind of like a little black ticker tape coming across the bottom of my screen, and the amounts of the donations that people in the meeting have made begin to show up. So you can see that this is an incredibly powerful tool to get some kind of competitive juices going in your meeting, so that everyone can see who's donated and, more importantly, maybe who hasn't. We did have a question earlier about AI, and Givent takes advantage of AI. You can see on the form that next to the names of the people who have donated, there's a boost button. So a clever host can say, let's see who's donated what. And there's that Leona. She donated $500. Well, I'm gonna show her, and click the boost button. And now the first donation button I see is $800. And you all control the scale of how aggressive you want to set that boost to. But it uses AI, it analyzes what the donation is you're trying to boost, and it takes the buttons to a higher level. So it's a great tool, super easy to activate and install, and unique to Click and Pledge.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kate. I'm going to share back my screen. Take it back. Awesome. Okay. So I'm only going to go for about 5 more minutes, but I do want to mention that we do have a Salesforce integration. And, you don't have to be a Salesforce user in order to use Click and Pledge, but it is a really powerful and popular tool in CRM. So we decided to integrate. So every single transaction that happens with Click and Pledge will be populated into Salesforce. And some of these features within the Click and Pay suite, which is our integration with Salesforce, include store events, patron portal, Clickets, which are basically like widgets that display campaign progress. We have Dispatch, which is more for like one-on-one communication or mass communication, and that's going to be either through email or text. We have donation reminders, and that's called Nudge. We have Analyst, which ranks your patrons based off of their giving history as well as their influence and ability to fundraise. We have a settings section. We have a security and permissions section. I really like that because let's say you have donor or fundraisers who only need access to one specific thing. They can have access to that one thing, and then somebody who's higher up, let's say maybe like the CEO of the nonprofit or somebody who's, the VP of whatever, has more permission. So that's a really, really cool thing with the security. And then we have Vault, which is regarding anything with transactions. All right. So the last bucket is going to be our mobile application, and that is Swiper One. And the thing with Swiper One is inside we do have a few things in there. So we have a card reader. So let's say that you're at an event and you want to take donations or you want to sell items. We have that card reader for you to be able to use. We have a mobile storefront. And then we also have a donor outreach tool. And this is great if you want to be able to send audio messages or video messages to donors. And you can make them, as tailored as you want to the donor, or you can do it in mass. So it's really up to you. Okay. So again, this is just scratching the surface of what we have here at Click and Pledge. And I just want to offer you guys a demo if you do want to see more of what we have to offer. So if you do scan this QR code, it will take you to our Get in Touch form, and we'll set up a demo with you, and we'll be happy to show you around. And yeah, so with that, I'm actually going to pass it back. I think I'm going to pass it to Bethany, if that's correct. Let's see if I can find the question that we were on.
And actually, there's a question, Rachel, you brought up peer-to-peer fundraising, and we have a question on peer-to-peer from Jamie. And so maybe let's address this question since we're kind of on topic, and then we'll go back to the other questions.
Yeah.
The question is, I would love to hear more about peer-to-peer fundraising, how we can get help from students and spread the word to scale it and spread the word. One student raised $500 with a small campaign, and we'd love to spread that same model across more schools and communities. So obviously peer-to-peer fundraising is very popular. It's a great way to introduce your organization to new donors. Amber and Joanne, do you have any thoughts on peer-to-peer fundraising or ways to scale it?
I'm sure we do. Joanne, do you want me to start off or you?
Go ahead.
Well, the first thing is, sounds like you have a great success story of the student who raised $500. If you haven't already, I would really prop that up as an amazing story on your socials, assuming you have their permission to do so, and talking about how amazing it was and really recognize them, because that sends the message that you're hoping other people will do that as well. Secondly, I don't know if you have this already, but with peer-to-peer fundraising, one of the most important things you can do is provide a toolkit or a guide to your prospective fundraisers. You don't want to send them out and say, go raise money, and because then they're lost, right? You want to provide everything they need to make it as easy and frictionless as possible. That includes things like example donation request messaging, example social media posts that they can personalize, graphics, photos, make them feel like all they have to do is kind of personalize it, but they have a good foundation for what to say when they're raising money. Joanne, what do you think?
Oh, definitely. And again, just looking at your current donors and who would make great ambassadors. I mean, there's a couple of different types of peer-to-peer. There's the one-off where somebody goes out and raises money for you, or there's an actual campaign where you gather ambassadors. And you launch a, during a certain time period or a one-day event. And it all starts with those relationships, who is closest to you. So again, going back to community, how are you building community and how are you building relationships?
Awesome.
And your board. Yes, Amber, and your board, definitely.
Okay, Bethany, I'll let you get back to it.
Sounds good. Well, hi, everybody. Thanks again for being with us. For all the unfamiliar names on the list, I'm Bethany Teague. I'm the Director of Storytelling for the Click and Pledge Foundation. And thanks, Amber and Joanne, for being here and for the discussion so far. So let's jump back in. Joanne, this one's coming at you from Jack from Vermont Museum of Natural History. And I think I saw Jack on the list. So hi, Jack. So after establishing a relationship with a potential donor, when and how is the best time and way to ask for a donation? That's a great question. It's almost like dating, you know what I mean? It's like, when do I ask? At what time? How often do I ask? So in as much as it relates to nonprofits, Joanne, what do you think?
Well, there's two ways. The way that I was taught, so I'm a CFRE, and there's a very set process. You're supposed to do it as a team. You go in with, if you're the fundraiser, maybe your executive director or your board chair. It has to be in a nice, quiet environment. You state your case. That's not the way I do it. I like to research. I mean, it all starts with research, right? So who am I asking? And I'm going to use an example. There was she was the community investment person for an oil company, and I needed to go in and ask them for a very substantial gift. And I knew enough about her to know that I should invite her shoe shopping. So we went to Holt Renfrew and went shoe shopping. And it was just worked beautifully because I met her. I, you know, what interests her. I showed that I knew her and I understood her. And then I was able to make the request. So really, it starts at that research phase. Then I'll get to know that particular donor. I mean, some donors don't want to get together at the office. Some donors want to come in and have an ask right there during a program, or maybe they want to go out for dinner or they want to grab a coffee, you know, just really understanding who I'm asking. But as with anything, if I really understand my case and I really understand the donor and I really understand the need and the impact, I can't go wrong, right? Just bring that passion in with me and make sure to present the case as strongly as possible, and then the call to action. Nothing vague, like your support would mean a lot to us. You know, I want to be very specific. I want to know the amount that I'm asking for. I want to know the impact that it's going to have and present it in a way that they are creating this change. So I hope that's helpful, Jack. Amber, do you have anything you want to add?
Just a message of encouragement to say that there's no perfect answer to this. And it's really, like Joanne was saying, it's about knowing that unique human and cultivating a relationship with them, right? I've certainly asked donors who said no, and I've asked donors who have said yes. And there was no specific, consistent timing across all of them. It was just, you know what? We have trusting, open conversations. We've talked about the inner workings of the organization. They know what the needs are, and they seem to be interested in supporting more. I think I'm going to go for it.
And Amber, do you have any thoughts about just kind of how to, and when you, in your experience in your nonprofit, how you dealt with hearing that no from potential donors?
Yeah, and I'd be curious to see if Joanne's experiences echo mine. But the thing is, I'm someone who I will, if someone unsubscribes from my mailing list, I'm like, ooh, you know, but I have to remember it's not usually about me personally. Like maybe they just have 10 million emails and it's not about me. They just need to declutter their life, which I can get behind. So just remembering that when you hear no, it's often not about you. It could be it's just bad timing. Maybe something just happened in their family. It could be that there's a missing information. They don't quite understand what your needs are. And so asking some questions can really get to the heart of that. But what do you think, Joanne?
Yeah, you know, it's a great opportunity to learn and to grow. Why did they say no? I mean, I went to a donor who declined and it was too much heart for him. He wanted to know the stats, he was tech, right? So I didn't write the proposal to him as a human. That was my biggest learning from it. So no, a no is a fabulous opportunity to learn and grow.
And actually, just one more thought about that. An opposite sort of story. I was cultivating a relationship with a donor, and I kept offering these things that most donors really resonate with, like direct program expenses and fund our ability to help 10 schools. And, you know, but he's like, no, I'm a business person. I want to know what are the infrastructure needs that you want to cover that no one else can cover. And I have to tell you, this is like a unicorn situation, right? Nobody wants to fund infrastructure and capacity, but this guy did. And I was like, oh, well, if you donated this amount, we could hire a new fund development person and expand our capacity to raise all this money, which would then make us more sustainable. And he was like, you got it. And he funded it for a couple of years. So it's all about just knowing the unique preferences and styles of your person.
Absolutely. Back to the relationship. Okay, so next question comes from Courtney with Joyful Farms. How do you convince people to donate to your vision before you carry it out so that you can carry it out? Amber, what do you think?
Hi, Courtney. This one is tough. And My answer is not, it's not going to give you a magical formula. Okay. The best thing you can do at this stage is really learn how to clearly articulate the need and your plan for addressing it. I think you're the Courtney from my community. So I'll say this is all about the gap, right? When we talk about the gap, what we're talking about is the difference between what you're able to do now and then with funding, the transformation you can make with that support. So if you're just starting out, you don't have a track record necessarily or existing programs that you can uplift and say, well, here's what our program does now. But you do have research on the needs in your community. And you might also have research from similar programs in other cities or communities that have been proven to be successful. So you could say something like, we really want to start something here that is similar to this model we've seen be successful in this city. And here's why we think it will work. The need here in this city is great. And with your support, we can get this program off the ground that is meeting a need no one else is meeting, and get them in early and get their advice and feedback. Because if you can get their emotional and intellectual investment early on, then they'll be bought in and want to support you financially as well. Joanne, any thoughts here?
Yeah, exactly. I'm working with an organization that is brand new. And we're positioning them as an ed tech nonprofit, which just finding they did all of the research and have all of that data, but they're a startup. So we're really looking at ways that we can tap into that whole startup mentality, being a tech organization and a nonprofit. So yeah, research.
And have you all found that there are a lot of folks that are really willing to share their expertise, or is it more of kind of a competitive spirit among in these areas, or do you find that there are a lot of people that are willing to offer that help?
There's a common phrase in nonprofits: if you want money, ask for advice. If you want advice, ask for money. And I have seen this play out. So I think, Bethany, that people will love to give you their advice and their feedback. And hopefully in doing so, will later give you their money.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the best ways to build a relationship, is involve them.
All right. Next question comes from Anne from Right to Life League. What are actual examples of excellent thank you letters or fundraising letters? Great question. And that's something that I feel like we've gotten a lot of, we've had a lot of discussions about that with our Click and Pledge customers, and have developed products as a result of that. So I think that's definitely a big one. Joanne, what do you think?
I think the two are very different. They both start by understanding who the document is going to, and writing for that person. But in terms of thank you letters, honestly, I'm not a fan. I'm a fan of the thank you call, because then when I'm speaking to them, or even when I get their voicemail, I can pull out some certain demographic information, or if I can actually have a conversation with them, I can ask them questions to help me really understand who our donors are, which will also help me write better fundraising letters. So that, and having a full stewardship plan. I mean, it's not just the thank you letter, it's the impact report that you're going to send them. It's the stories you're going to send them. It's how you're going to keep them updated on the gifts that they made. And then with fundraising letters, I mean, obviously how we outline the need, the impact to community. Yeah, that's a whole other hour-long webinar on writing fundraising materials. But that's always my suggestion. As soon as I see thank you letters, is they're great, but a call is even better. And then, or a text or a video or just something different, stand out, be unique, right? Really show off your mission. Amber?
No, nailed it.
Next question from Igioma. As a starter in the nonprofit space, how can I access my first grant? Amber.
Yeah. Coincidentally, I just did a YouTube video answering this very question. So hopefully you can check that out too. But there's a couple things to keep in mind here, which is, first, confirming that grants are really the strategy you want to go for first. They're highly competitive. They can be very time consuming. So I would actually recommend other revenue building strategies when you're first starting out, like individual donations, or even some sponsorships from companies if you have a relationship there. But if you're going to pursue grants, you've got to get really honed in on who are your likely funders who align with your issue area, your mission, and the amount of money that you can expect in a first grant, which is probably in the hundreds to thousands. So you're thinking small scale for these first grants to build momentum. You're probably, unless you have some amazing contacts that I'm jealous of, not going to be getting $1 million grants right out the gate. So thinking through who in your community has grant offerings that align. So in my video, I talk about looking at small businesses in your community, banks, grocery stores. Like these are some of and car dealerships, like unexpected places that offer these smaller first-time grants, looking at the small businesses there, and then studying their websites to find on maybe like a community relations page or a social responsibility page information about their philanthropy programs, because they will talk about what types of causes they want to support, causes they've supported in the past, and looking for any that are similar to yours. There's a lot more to say about this that we can't cover in the time we have here, but those are just some quick starter tips. Joanne, anything to add?
Yeah, just grant software, the grant research software can be an excellent starting point, but I really do agree with Amber in that if you're a brand new nonprofit, it might not be the best place to start. And a really killer annual campaign, something that brings in those new donors that can help keep those donors engaged year after year, and potential sponsors, and really starting that way.
Right. Next question comes from Alicia from Movement Arts Cape Cod. How do we raise funds to pay expenses? Joanne.
The annual campaign again. Annual campaigns are generally they're unrestricted gifts. I'm going to use an example. So I have a client that I work with that does residential or second stage housing after addiction treatment. And they have a capital or a project that they were doing that was raising money for pre-treatment housing. So that's restricted, right? That we can only use that money for that particular project. So we worked up a year-end campaign that was unrestricted. And that was, we did social media, we did email, there was events in conjunction with it. It was this beautifully themed year-end annual campaign. And all that money can now be used to pay for their expenses, like their rent, their overhead. So again, annual campaigns that are unrestricted. Amber?
Anything to add to that?
Oh, yeah. If you have the capacity to think about fees for service models, I am a huge advocate of those. If you're not familiar, it's when you charge a reasonable fee for your services, as the title suggests. But they can really help you bring in some sustainable revenue when you can't necessarily count on grants, for example, or unrestricted donations. Those can help too.
And do y'all have any thoughts about kind of how to communicate that or pitch that in a way? Because Amber, you're mentioning, oh, you found the unicorn that wanted to pay for the infrastructure. Do you have any thoughts about how to pitch things that maybe seem a little bit less exciting?
Yeah, it's all about being able to explain how they're going to impact the organization and then your outcomes in the community, right? So, you have to be able to draw a line between how that infrastructure helps you grow your impacts or deepen your impacts in the community. The unicorn donor that I found understood that if we could raise more money, we could help more organizations and schools, which was part of what my organization did. And explaining that to him, he just got it instantly because that was his background. But those people do exist. And it's just about taking that extra step to explain how if we can invest in this accounting software, we're going to free up 10 hours of our time that we can then redirect into our programs, just thinking of how that infrastructure then helps your programs or your outcomes.
All right. Next question from Kevin from Exploring the Arts here in County. What kind of fundraisers are legit? For example, pizza kits have nothing to do with our arts camp, so my understanding is that they would not be permitted for fundraising. Is that correct? Joanne, what do you think?
I do not know the legalities down here in the States on that. So I honestly couldn't answer that one. Amber?
Yeah. So, Kevin, I think what you're talking about is discussions we've had around earned income. This idea that if the way you're generating revenue doesn't further your mission, then you could potentially be penalized for it. And there's some nuances here that are related to unrelated business income rules from the IRS. So, what all that means is you can raise money through pizza kits. I haven't heard of that, but I mean, I can imagine what they are. But you just can't raise a significant portion of your budget that way, unless for some reason Pizza Kits has something to do with your like furthering your mission. An example I always like to use is the Girl Scouts. Girl Scout cookies is a way that they generate revenue, and they make the argument that having the girls sell Girl Scout cookies does further the Girl Scouts mission because the girls are learning entrepreneurial skills. So that's how they avoid the unrelated business income penalties that are part of the question here, I believe. As for, are they legit? I mean, you'd probably have to analyze that on a case by case basis. I don't know if some are like running scams. So sure, be careful about that. But if you just mean in the context of if you're allowed to do them at all, yes, you are. You just can't raise a significant portion of your budget that way, or you could face IRS penalties unless it aligns with and furthers your mission. I hope that makes sense.
All right, thanks, Amber. Next question from Deborah from Guardian Pet Trust. We have social media campaigns and a free ebook spreading awareness about our nonprofit. The only people who contact us are people wanting to sell us something. How do you suggest driving real traffic to us so we can build an email list? Amber, do you want to take that one?
I think actually we flagged this one for Joanne, who's our expert in lead gen. Is that correct?
Yeah, and no problem. I can answer this because I'm assuming there might be some social media ads going on with this, which is why you're being contacted by people who want to sell you something. It's going to happen, unfortunately. When you do, I love lead magnets like this. When you have an ebook that you know, it's free to download. People can sign up for your email list by downloading it. I love it. It helps build the list. But there are some issues around it in that you will get some people who get the download, then jump off your list. Or when you send the next email out to your list, they're not opening it. So that's hurting your open rates. And yes, you'll get people contacting you wanting to sell you something or wanting something for free. But they are still an excellent way to build your email list. So how I like to promote them is through social media, but also making sure that it's on our website. I'll do a landing page specifically for it and optimize it for search engines to help drive some traffic that way. And then social media ads, but you will get those, and you'll also get those spammy things that come up on Facebook too when you run ads. Amber, anything else?
Yeah, and I don't know what your ebook includes, but just doing a gut check to make sure what you're offering behind the lead magnet is something that the people you want on your list actually want. Guardian Pet Trust. Let's say you're an animal rescue organization. I mean, what are the types of people you want on your list, and what do those people want? Tips on training their dog? I would want that, for example. So I don't know. Just think about like who's your target audience again, and what do they want from you, and can you give it to them?
Yeah, no, exactly. If you give them a reason to sign up for your email list, what value are you providing them? Same with social media. Give them a reason to follow you on social media. What value are you providing to them?
All right, I think we have time for one more question. So how do I get a partner for my grassroots organization? That comes from Wavu from Kazi Mingi Foundation. Amber, do you want to take a crack at that?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great question. Partnerships are super, super helpful and important. The first thing you want to do is really assess what do you need from a partner and what are you able to offer a partner. I don't know if you know the old game Go Fish, but it's kind of like that, right? So um, let's say you're a nonprofit and what you really need is greater exposure to your target audience. So you're looking for the right partner who has access to that target audience, but then what do you have to offer? Maybe you have a warehouse. I'm just making things up, and your partner happens to need space for their event. So now you have something you can offer and something that you need, and it can be mutually beneficial. But being really clear about these expectations up front can make sure that you find the right partner and also that you can have a really mutually beneficial relationship that is built on trust and, like I said, that mutual support. Getting it all in writing, if it's something that you'd benefit from formalizing, is also a good idea. Saying, we will give you this, you will give us that. Here's how we plan to work together. Writing all those expectations down can also really mitigate conflict and any issues that could arise in a less formal partnership. And if you're asking how to find these partners, there's so many opportunities to network in your community. A lot of cities have nonprofit networking groups. Civic clubs are a great place to start. I don't know if you have like a Kiwanis or a Lions Club in your area, but those could be good places. And then places like this, where you're surrounded by people who know other nonprofits. So putting out there specifically what you need in a partner and seeing what people can recommend in terms of who might be a good partner for you. It was a little bit of a long answer, but Joanne, do you have anything else to add?
And just the relationship building before making that request. Making sure that you build some sort of relationship before just coming in with this pitch and asking for it.
Totally fair. Yes, that's an important step.
All right. Well, I think that will do it for the questions. Susan or Rachel, do you have anything to add before we?
We do. I know we're at the end of the hour. There were a couple more questions that were in the Q&A area. Amber, Joanne, do you have a little extra time to answer
Amber, you good
those?
for time?
Yeah, Joanne, this AI one has your name written all over it.
And let's go ahead and read the question. This is from Kevin. What do you see as the role of AI in fundraising, both the opportunities and potential pitfalls?
I'll start with the pitfalls. That would be obviously not humanizing outputs, inputting any sensitive donor data in there. What are our donors going to think when they find out that we're using AI? So there are definitely concerns, but here's an example of my morning. I took a bunch of old donor data and scrubbed out the names, but I wanted to get kind of assess where they were at. So I threw it into a model. I have a private model, but I crunched all the numbers, did a bunch of jigging to kind of see what their average donation is like and what their, who some of their prospects would be. Created a donor persona based on a lot of the data. I also scrubbed a bunch of information from social media, but then I took all of their past grant proposals and their program brochures. I created a GPT to help me write a lot of the materials I'm going to need to write. I mean, there's so many different ways to use it, and it saves me so much time. So I think that much like anything else that's come out, when websites came out, nonprofits were very resistant to it. Oh, when e-commerce came out, very resistant to online donations. Social media, when that came out. So I think it's going to be one of those things that it might take a while for nonprofits to really truly adopt it, but I think it's here to stay. And I think those fundraisers who learn how to incorporate it into their workflows to save them time, create more efficiency, do the brainstorming, I think those fundraisers are going to excel. I just think we need to make sure that there's policies in place to oversee it so that we're not, we're always fact checking, we're always humanizing, we're always protecting data. So That's my long-winded answer on that, very condensed.
Joanne, what would you say has been your trick to kind of embracing some of the new stuff that has come out over time rather than being super resistant to it?
I think using it. So I'm actually dealing with that right now. Creating an AI policy for an organization, and some people use it, some people are very against it. So just showing them, well, here's what I've done, and when they see it in action, then they're suddenly a little bit more open to it, because there is so much time saving to it, so much. And the capabilities are, there's things that are beyond my scope that it can do. Math. I can't do math. So it's yeah, that really helps them to. And then for me, I learned it by just doing. I picked up a few pieces and just started to do. Amber, you got anything you want to add to it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole, like, even just saying AI strikes fear into some hearts. Like, that sounds new and scary. But the fun thing is you can engage, like, I'll be on Chat GPT and ask it questions about how to use it, like you can engage with it to be your guide. And I built, this grant writing GPT also, just using it to help me build it, if that makes sense. So just giving it a try and like feeling around. It's very conversational. Well, the ones we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Even video. I just put out a video on using AI video, and you can do some amazing things with it, especially for organizations that can't use real people. Right. I work for a lot of vulnerable organizations that serve vulnerable populations. Well, so we can't have real people in it. So how do we use AI to create those videos that are symbolic?
And Susan, do we have any others who are trying to tackle?
Yeah, there's one more question from Gail for membership-based nonprofit, asking for membership management software programs. Any suggestions on that? I will mention that Click and Pledge, we do have some organizations that are membership-based. Our fundraising software is not specific to that particular area, but that might be something that you can look into if you provide your list of wants and needs. But Amber, Joanne, do you have any other suggestions for that?
I mean, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you just said wants and needs list, because there's so many different, like, we would have to know what exactly you're trying to accomplish with it. Are you trying to engage them in online discussions? Are you just trying to facilitate membership payments? Like, what are the different things you need it to do? So Gail, I would say your first step is just making your shopping list, or your, as Susan put it, your list of wants and needs, and searching based on that. And yeah, so.
Agreed. There's so many out there nowadays.
It is a lot. So always a good place to start with your list. And a follow-up question for Joanne, which program did you use for your videos, the videos that you were just talking about?
I use Sora, so that's right out of ChatGPT. I also used I think it was Artflow, Veed, Beyond. There's millions. But Sora I just find is the easiest for me to use because I have a ChatGPT Plus subscription.
Thank you. Thank you. And I know we're over time, so I am going to pass that, I guess, back to Rachel.
Yeah, so I'm just going to put this on the screen one last time. If you do want a demo from us, we'll be happy to give you one. That's completely free. I just want to thank Joanne and Amber again for joining us. I mean, it has been so insightful. I mean, I've even learned so much from this. So I just want to extend a thank you again. And as a little side note, look for an email from us or Amazon with your $10 gift card if you did stay till the end. We really do appreciate you being here and joining us and learning some things. And we hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.